L'Arrivée, 3 First in the Vieux Carré, a concert presented by the LPO and Historic New Orleans Collection. Saturday, December 14th at 8 p.m., only on WLAE.
Hello, I'm Keith Spira from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. My guests this week on Let's Talk with Keith Spira are Russ Broussard and Susan Cowsill from the Continental Drifters. You guys are musical bandmates, you're married.
Yes.
Who's the better musician of the two?
He is.
We'll hash that out this week on Let's Talk.
We're local and educational. You're watching WLAE-TV, celebrating 40 years of New Orleans public television.
With Eric Asher is underwritten by.
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
CNC Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, CNC provides patient-centered care for your entire family. CNC Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we cover all the home teams we do each and every week. Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans, all on the docket today. Breaking it down for us to the best we have in the state. Crescent City Sports' own Jude Young, also again of 106.1 The Ticket, and also Guerry Smith of the Wave Report and NOLA.com, Times-Picayune, and The Advocate. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Good to have both of you. Thank you for coming down. Happy holidays to each and every one of you. We'll start with you, Jude. Tell us all about what's going on at CrescentCitySports.com, 106.1 The Ticket. Big week for again, both with, again, high school playoffs concluding in the Dome this weekend.
Absolutely. Happy holidays to y'all. Happy holidays to everyone out there. As Eric mentioned, this is a huge week for us at Crescent City Sports and The Ticket because it's the state high school football championships in the Superdome Thursday through Saturday, and we're going to have 4 of those games live on The Ticket involving local and extended local schools like St. James and Franklinton, Archbishop Shaw, E.D. White, of course Edna Carr on Saturday, a big marquee one at noon, and we're going to have all 8 of those games, the official audio provider again this year for the LHSA, on Crescent City Sports. You can listen to a free audio stream and have unbiased coverage of that for folks who want to know what's going on in the games. We have local coaches being involved as analysts. It's going to be an undertaking. We're going to be on the air something like, we calculated it easily, over 3 days. It's going to be like 30 hours. We're not going to stop on those 8 championships over 3 days. So we're excited about that. Obviously on The Ticket, I'm part of the All Access lineup at 6 o'clock in the evenings, as well as the voice of UNO basketball. The Privateers have 3 games in 8 days coming up. I'm going to call a high school championship game, the Franklinton game on the Friday night, then get no sleep because we're super early to go to the airport as UNO plays Iowa on The Ticket on Sunday afternoon at 1. Then we'll be in Austin a week from Thursday against the Longhorns, and then LSU a week from Sunday, and then And finally, I'll be very happy for
Yeah.
a little bit of a Christmas break. But it's good to be busy this time of year with stuff that people should be enjoying, especially our content on the ticket in Crescent City Sports.
Great time of year, there's no doubt about it. Guerry, welcome back to the show. Again, Gary's with us each and every Thursday on our program on the radio show at 4:15. But Guerry, welcome back. Tell the folks about the WLAE Report. Also, again, what's going on at the Picayune and the Advocate.
Sure. The WLAE Report, my Rivals.com site. You can, it's the WLAEReport.com, Tulane.Rivals.com. Wall-to-wall coverage of Tulane football. You can go up there right now and see all my takes on everything that's happened this week, and a whole lot has happened, starting with Darian Mensah and obviously for NOLA.com, same deal. I'll be headed on next Tuesday. I'll be headed to Tampa and we'll be there for 4 days to cover Tulane in the Gasparilla Bowl against Florida.
Beautiful. All right, let's start with high school. Jude, you'll break it down for us. Talk a little bit about the high school championships in the Dome this weekend.
I think we got some standing matchups in the Dome, and to be able to cram in those games like we do from noon on Thursday all the way to playing the last one at 3:30 on Saturday. If you love football, if you love local sports, I mean, find some time to get to the Dome if you can, because it's a great experience. And we're excited to bring those games and to have a lot of local teams involved. We'll be following South Plaquemines and then St. James on those final 2 games on Thursday. Then Shaw and E.D. White winds up being at noon on Friday. Not the best time, but these were predetermined, but I'm sure there'll be a great local crowd for both. It's the one game involving 2 true local teams, so that'll start off a busy Friday. Of course, I mentioned I'll be doing the Franklinton game against Cecilia that night. Might be the highest scoring game of the bunch, so that's why I say no sleep. I'm ready to be there a while. And all the way through with Edna Cars. They're finally back at the Dome. Probably as dominant a program as we've had locally for the last 10 years plus, but they've had a bit of a dry spell. It's been a few years, and now they're back there with what may be their best team ever, and probably the favorite to be the local player of the year in John Johnson at quarterback. But they have Division I guys all over the place, and they'll play an Alexandria team with J.T. Lindsay, one of the big LSU signees at running back. They're loaded with offense, so that could be the perfect marquee game to start off that Saturday, and we're happy again to have that on the ticket. But like I said, we're going to have so many people covering it. If you just go onto our link that's at Crescent City Sports and listen in and follow along, we're going to have it covered from wall to wall, everything you need to know, including some recruiting takes that people really care about.
Were there any surprises in your opinion? You've covered high school all year long in terms of the teams that got to the Dome.
No, surprisingly, there hasn't been. The only division out of the 8 that didn't have a #1 seed reach it. A little bit shocking that Neville lost at home to Central, one of the better defensive teams in the state. Central pulled off that upset on a blocked field goal at the end to win 17-13. Neville was about to go up 6 in the final 2 minutes. It's a blocked field goal return for a touchdown, and that's how the Wildcats were a great story, because there was a car accident the first week of the season, and they were missing players, including key offensive players, that affected them all year, but their defense has been carrying them. They're one of the great stories coming out of the Baton Rouge area. But other than that, you know, you have a lot of the matchups you'd expect. Like I mentioned, the game I'm doing, Franklinton has the 1 seed that you look at the number and go, wow, an 18 seed in Cecilia. But they're probably the highest scoring team in the state, or the second highest scoring team, and the most balanced one that played for a state championship last year. And a lot of folks say they're favorite over #1 seed Franklinton. So because Franklinton's going to have to keep up. Nick Saltafamaggio, the great coach there, who's taken a couple teams to state title games already and won one 11 years ago at East Jeff. He said yesterday at a media meet and greet that we hosted in Metairie that the number 82 is what's sticking in his mind. People asked him why. It's because he said, we might need to score 82 points to beat that team. so if you like offense, that's one of the games to catch for sure.
Of course, you'll be able to catch that all on CrescentCitySports.com, every single game. And of course, again, 4 games on the ticket for you as well. All right, let's talk some Tulane as we open up the program, talk a little bit about the collegiate game. And Guerry, we'll start with you first. Did you get any sleep this week?
A couple hours here and there. Yeah. I'm still feeling the effects.
I bet you are. Okay, we'll get into Army Tulane a little bit later on, but let's start again with a big story this week, and it is John Summerall signing an extension with Tulane. From, I guess, Friday night to Sunday, again, a lot of Tulane fans in limbo, really worried about, again, the possibility of John Summerall bolting for the University of North Carolina. You've been on top of the story since day one. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, he definitely wrestled with this decision. And one, there was no absolute decision to make, because North Carolina, they had a kind of a schism on their side, where I think the athletic director was all in on Summerall, but a lot of the people on their search committee wanted Bill Belichick, which I don't get, but that's another story entirely. And I think Summerall really, he was kind of contingent on this whole thing. Obviously, it's a hefty pay raise to go to North Carolina, but he also had to figure out where could he have a better chance to. North Carolina isn't his end destination in his mind. It just isn't. And does he have everything in place at Tulane where he can keep furthering his resume and still do big things at Tulane? He really does feel like he can make the college football playoffs in the next couple of years, and that everything's in place at Tulane. So he just said he had a tough decision. I think he wrestled with it a lot, and I think it kind of reminded me of the Willie Fritz situation in Georgia Tech 2 years ago, where some people wanted him, they wanted to hire him, but there was a lot of people that wanted their Brent Key to stay there. And I think they ended up maybe made a good decision with Brent Key, because Georgia Tech's done pretty well. And it was kind of a mess, because Willie would have been going into a situation where a lot of people didn't want him. And I think that was a factor with Summerall, and I really do think he wanted some assurances from the Tulane administration. Again, this isn't, fans are obsessed with the practice facility, and the practice facility is nice, but that's not where it's at right now in college football. It's NIL. And he wanted to make sure that with this new deal where schools are going to be able to do this stuff directly, that Tulane wouldn't start falling behind other teams. Because right now Memphis is ahead of Tulane. There's nothing they can do about that with FedEx behind them and all of that. South Florida may be slightly ahead of Tulane in terms of their support, but Tulane, other than that, right now is third in the league, and he wanted to make sure that Tulane didn't fall down and was competitive, so that they would have a chance to, in this new recruiting environment that we live in, to be successful.
You asked the question in the press conference on Sunday, and honestly, Coach looked like he got a little bit aggravated by it, okay?
No
and again, to me, it looked like, again, this guy's got his foot out the door. Obviously, it didn't happen that way. But he mentioned about tripling his salary. North Carolina did offer him more money, right?
Yeah, they did. I don't know the exact numbers on that, but yeah, I mean, that's just North Carolina. They're a Power 4 conference, and they were serious about this. At least a lot of the people at North Carolina. I mean, to me, he was the number one choice from them, but they never made a commitment one way or the other in the process. But
now, as far as, again, concessions to Summerall to sign the extension, the thing that really caught me was it wasn't about Summerall, and it wasn't about him with the money. It was about the program and the assistants. If you would expound on what happened.
It's just about the assistants and just NIL, really. Because that's where it is now. That's just the reality. You see it. Players are making demands for how much money they want during seasons to stay and stuff like that, and you can't fall behind in that department. And Tulane's their Fear the Wave collective has done a tremendous job with Mike Arata and Jimmy Ordino, but now it's the whole deal where it can become in-house. I know they're going to have discussions about how that's all going to work down the road, but Summerall knew, I mean, if you fall back at all at this point, you're just not getting you don't win without players. It doesn't matter what type of coach you are. If you don't have good enough players, you can't win. And he wanted to make sure that Tulane was making a true commitment to being a winning football program.
Now, again, revenue sharing kicks in 2025. That's also part of what he wanted as well. He wanted maybe more of the revenue sharing for the football
It's hard
program?
to say exactly what he wanted. He just wants to know that Tulane football is not going to be left behind in any way, shape, or form, because obviously Tulane's had a history of going back and forth on this. There have been periods where they were committed and then suddenly they weren't. And he wanted to make sure that these guys were all in on doing whatever they needed to do to make the Tulane football team.
And the other part of this was, again, more money for his pool of assistants, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely
Expound on
part of it. Just, I mean, as he says, you don't win without a great assistant staff. He doesn't want to lose any of his guys. His guys are very loyal to him. He has a terrific staff, and it definitely wasn't about himself making more money. It was about, again, you can't win without commitment to your assistants too.
And I'm surprised the fact that, again, because the practice facility has been something that's been discussed so much over the last 4 years. Willie Fritz really wanted this. This was kind of the reason why he's in Houston today. That was not built. That was not really, again, the focus of what Summerall really wanted, right?
It really isn't. Like, he wants, because it's a complicated thing, just at Tulane, finding the spot.
Because they're landlocked.
Yeah, and it's not just the athletic department involved in this. So as long as he feels like they're doing their due diligence on it. Look, they can practice at the Saints facility when they want. They can practice at the Superdome when they want. That's not ideal when you have classes, but it's it's not a be end all for him because they have that option.
Yes.
It's not like if it rains there, they can't. If there's lightning in the area, they can't do anything. So as long as he feels like they're not dragging their feet intentionally or just being lazy about doing stuff, that's not the deal breaker for him one way or the other. It just isn't.
What's your take?
Well, it seems like this is a replay, as you mentioned, parallels to Willie Fritz with the Georgia Tech situation, but just flirtations in general, as he was clearly building something at Tulane over those 8 years, and you leverage that every single time, not just for yourself with your agent, but as Guerry mentioned time and time again, assistants, players now, you've got to have the money for both of those to be able to compete, and he obviously got the commitment that he needed. No situation's perfect, like with the practice facility, but Tulane has made a commitment. But you have a relatively new still athletic director in David Harris, and he's betting himself in and figuring out the politics of the situation and the big picture politics outside to position Tulane. So a lot of conversations had to take place about that if you're Sumrall, because when you're the hot name right now, that doesn't mean you're going to be the hot name tomorrow. On the flip side, though, guys, North Carolina, when I saw that, I'm like, that's where you're going to go when you're the hot name and you're in a good position to keep winning. That made no sense to me, and he probably lucked out that there's internal politics in Chapel Hill.
I think he really did like their athletic director. I think he was really impressed
That's important,
with him. But there was a lot of conflict over there about what direction they're. And the fact that they were, I can't get over this Bill Belichick thing. The fact that they were strongly considering him, that's a red flag in itself, because he may be a great coach. He's never coached in college. He's in his 60s. Apparently, he's wanting an agreement where his son is the coach, and his son has no qualification to be the head coach. And now he's talking about running it exactly like an NFL program. That doesn't make. If they've got a bunch of guys over there that seriously want him, I question just their sense of reality.
Well, no matter the logic of the situation at North Carolina, that just tells you, if you're Sumrall, this is a place that's hard to win, because people are thinking extreme, flashy, different sort of things, because sure, they can win 9 games, 10 games in a given season, but they're never really a competitor for a national championship, even when they've had NFL quarterbacks lately, like a Drake May, who looks great as a rookie. He underachieved for 3 years there, and not because he didn't have a coach who knows what he's doing, and Mac Brown. You can only build so much of a roster there.
Their last ACC championship was in 1980. 1980. That's 44 years. That's 44 years ago, and it's a basketball school. First and foremost, it's a basketball school. I'm not sure exactly how it all went down in terms of him staying, but I think it was a good. It's better for him to be at Tulane in this situation. And also, Tulane had not had a one-year head coach since 1921, I believe. That's over 100 years, and he would have burned some bridges a little bit if he'd have moved on that quickly after 1 year. So I think it was the right choice for him, and if he continues on the path that he's on, he'll be
at SEC. He'll be at SEC.
That's what I'm saying.
Auburn, who knows where.
It's a Power 4 school, they call, but it's the worst of the 4.
Yes.
It's different when the highly competitive Big 12, where they're throwing money around. You think of that, but when your end goal is clearly the SEC with his roots, why take any chances and be at a place that's even remotely dysfunctional when you have Tulane now established? Like you said, it should be a top 3 team in this conference every year.
Yeah. Guerry, during the process of how Sumrall handled this, and you and I discussed things on and off the air, you think he's got any kind of remorse on how he handled this with his team? And from what I understand, he did not discuss, again, what was going on with his team, right?
Right.
And of course, we saw what happened, again, with the beatdown against Army.
He mentioned it tangentially that he was somewhat vague, because he didn't mention the year, but obviously he was talking about last year, that he was honest with his players at Troy through the whole thing, and they ended well. He didn't say a word to Tulane players about this situation. We can go back and forth about what happened, but Tulane absolutely played their 2 worst games of the year.
Yes.
When it mattered most. And I don't see there's any. It doesn't matter if every player isn't affected. If a few players are affected, it makes a difference. And they certainly tried against Army, but there was no doubt which team was trying harder in that game and was the more invested team. And obviously it helped that Army was playing at home. It was 30 degrees. The next time I hear a warm weather team claim that it doesn't matter when you're playing cold, we've been hearing this for years. Go back to Sean Payton when the Saints went up to Chicago in 2006 and they practiced indoors the whole week, and he said it was just a state of mind. And then they went out there and got down 17-0 midway, in the first quarter. It's not easy when you aren't used to those type of conditions to play. But I think all of that came into play. But look, he's a championship coach. He won 2 championships at Troy. He was not expecting this. Army's a really good team, but they hadn't played anything like that in their three previous games. They beat North Texas 14-3.
Right.
Then they got just destroyed by Notre Dame. Okay, that's a talent mismatch. And then they against Texas San Antonio, they couldn't run the ball. Their quarterback, Bryson Daly, played an unbelievable game throwing the ball in that game. He had to throw 27 passes because they couldn't run that well, and they were able to get by to host the game. And then they went out against Tulane and were just moving up and down the field on every possession. It was not a focused football team on Friday
I think
night.
Memphis beat Tulane twice.
Yeah, that's
because
also true.
Tulane was thinking more beyond the conference and winning the league and hosting the game. They were thinking college football playoff. They were next in line. If Boise would have lost, I think if they went out, Tulane's in that thing. So those players know that, and that's the dream, and the dream was dashed. I don't know if the Sumrall situation was really a distraction. My thought on the Memphis game and the way they performed was more they hadn't been challenged in so long this season, since the non-conference schedule. And even though they had a tight game against Rice where they really didn't play well, still they weren't really challenged by a team with that level of talent. No matter how much you look at film and prepare, and the coaches are telling you this is the best team we've played, maybe all season, maybe so, even though they played at Kansas State and Oklahoma. The way Memphis was playing at the time with their skill talent, I think they got shocked, they fell behind, and then you start doubting yourself, and it snowballs.
And some fluky stuff happened. The two all three turnovers came inside the 10-yard line, and they were good plays by Memphis, but two, if either receiver, if Yolkeith Brown doesn't fumble when he gets it inside the 10 on the first possession of the second half, and if Mario Williams doesn't fumble on the way down to the ground later in the game, maybe it's a different result. Memphis. Yeah, nobody's ever questioned Memphis' talent. They had not. Memphis played really well. They had not played that well.
But I think we forgot about them this year because Tulane became the team in the spotlight, and Memphis sort of was
working.
Memphis
really didn't play any good games. I mean, they had to rally. They had to go the length of the field in the last minute to beat Charlotte at home. I mean, they just had not played like that. But they were certainly capable of playing like that. And Tulane, I think your point is exactly right. Tulane wasn't ready for it because they just played a bunch of teams that really couldn't challenge them going.
Tulane won at Memphis last year in the big game. Memphis is not getting any of the publicity. This is their Super Bowl on Thanksgiving night, national TV at the end of the year, where Tulane had much more to play for, and they got caught. The Green Wave got caught against a team that played its best with nothing to lose.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's talk two things now. First of all, let's talk about the recruiting class for this year. How did the Wave end up?
Really good, especially. They didn't do so great in the actual recruiting rankings because the recruiting rankings are so skewed towards numbers, which now in the transfer portal era, that's ridiculous. I mean, they didn't want to sign more than 15 guys, maybe one or two more than they got. But if you go by the average star rating of the 15 players they got, it was far and away the tops in the American Athletic Conference, ahead of Memphis, ahead of South Florida, ahead of everybody. First two 4-star recruits. I mean, in the Rivals.com era, which started in 2001, Tulane had signed exactly one 4-star recruit, and that was Darian Monroe in 2012. Got two this year, doubled the total. Bunch of high 3-star recruits. They did exactly what they set out to do in the recruiting class.
Your thoughts on that class?
Well, I think it's great when you're able to balance the developing players that fit your system, that fit your culture, and then going out and obviously needing the transfer portal to then complete the roster. Tulane's balanced that well. Late Willie Fritz, and now John Sumrall gets it. It's as good as Tulane's been the last couple of years. You don't have the seasons they've had if you don't also recruit and develop a Darian Mensah, who we'll talk about in a moment. Anna Mackay Hughes has been a great find, and the ability to go across the Gulf South and find those 3-star players, some of which wind up playing in the NFL because you know real talent when you see it, you have the connections, and you can analyze what you need to fit your system and maximize what those players can do. Tulane's done that for several years now, and that's why they've been so good.
The next part of this, obviously, is the transfer portal, and of course, we found out that Darian Mensah is signing with Duke. Then there have been a lot of numbers thrown around, about $1 million a year is again what the ask price was. I don't know if they ended up giving him $1 million a year. Your thoughts on the loss of Mensah?
Well, first of all, it's tough because he is a really good quarterback. He certainly has some weaknesses that he needs to improve, but from all I covered him all year long, he's got the right mindset to do all of that. So there's no sugarcoating that losing him. I'm just surprised at the way it went down. I don't begrudge him. Look, he came from almost poverty in a sense in California because his dad had left the family and they were in a tough situation. They had to have relatives give them shoes for his practice and stuff like that. But for him to go out and have an agent who's really not an agent, who's an incompetent essentially boob, community college graduate running things. That's just, he just didn't do it the right way. And you can't, I like Darian Mensah, but it's not like he was forced to have these people representing him, and the way they handled it wasn't right. And you know, with him signing with Duke, committing to Duke so quickly, it's pretty clear this was in the works before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Right? And he certainly burned the bridges with this coaching staff. You get one word or 2 word answers about wish him well. However, Tulane plays Duke next year at Yeoman Stadium in week 2. That is going to be a really interesting game now, because this coaching staff is not happy with the whole thing. Again, they don't begrudge a guy if you're offered a ton more money, but it's just the whole way this whole thing was. They were blindsided by this. They had not heard a word from him on that this was going to happen when it happened, and suddenly it happens, and they're not happy.
I want to see Yeoman do its best Tiger Stadium impression. Put that thing at night and show me those angry students in that end zone. I want to see that. That would be a new thing for Tulane football. But sure, it's obviously disappointing that you have a first-year starter that hadn't played, that you've developed over the year, and
that you gave a shot to.
Right, and you don't get the benefit from that big leap quarterbacks that are good take from year 1 to year 2. So that hurts. But they obviously made the right decision to start him. Now I'm more concerned about the question of what are they going to do, and that's what Guerry's going to be following very closely, because we know Kai Horton's gone, and you've got Ty Thompson, who didn't win the job, and was expected to be the starter as a big-time transfer. So what's going to happen there? If you don't have a quarterback, it doesn't matter how good the rest of your roster is, and that's clearly their biggest question.
And it's going to be a quarterback from the portal almost, surely. Look, Ty Thompson's going to play in the bowl game, which is big. It's huge for him, because this is the guy. This is his 4th year as a college quarterback. He's never started a game before. I think it's pretty clear that they don't really think he is the guy as the starting quarterback. I would assume, I actually talked to him today. Obviously, he's not going to make a comment one way or the other on what his plans are. I would assume that he will enter the portal after the bowl game, but this is huge for him to show what he can do, to showcase himself, because again, he's never started a game in 4 years of college. So it's going to be a quarterback out of the portal, and it'll be, and then we'll get to see on how well they judge talent out of the portal at that position, and how well they coach him up when they arrive.
All right, Tulane taking on Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl. Florida 7-5, Tulane 9-4. That is Friday the 20th of December. It's a 2:30 kick at Raymond James in Tampa. Your thoughts?
Tough matchup. One thing is good, though. They're not playing some team from the MAC or something like that, where you want to talk about the who cares factor. It would have been off the charts. Playing Florida in the state of Florida will create some juice. I mean, the last time Florida played in the Gasparilla Bowl 3 years ago, it had an attendance of 63,000. Now it was against UCF in a state matchup. The Gasparilla Bowls had an attendance as low as like 14,000 in other years. So at least there'll be an atmosphere at the game. Florida's a tough assignment, obviously. They were 4-5 earlier in the year. Obviously, it was all kinds of questions with that program. The last 3 games, they beat LSU comfortably. They beat Ole Miss fairly comfortably, and they clobbered FSU. That's a 3-game stretch. That's a better 3-game stretch than any team's had that Tulane's played on their schedule this year. And their quarterback, DJ Lagway, is, once he became the starting quarterback, his numbers aren't that great, but everybody I've talked to that covers the team thinks he's the real deal. In fact, somebody, for old timers, I talked to one guy today who compared him to Darryl LaMonica.
Darryl LaMonica.
Because he goes deep a lot. Like, his numbers aren't that good. Darryl LaMonica was
the Mad Bomber
in touchdown passes and interceptions. Jameis Winston did that too, but Darryl LaMonica did it when he was winning. But they really think that this guy's the real deal, and that he's going to be a star, and he's a true freshman quarterback. It's a tough assignment for Tulane. It looks like they're going to have most of their players playing. Mario Williams, who had an absolutely terrific, he was the best player on the team against Army. They needed more guys to play like him. 6 catches for over 100 yards. He's going to play in the bowl game. He's from Tampa. So it looks like most of their guys are going to play in the game, but they're going to have to play their absolute best, and Ty Thompson's going to have to prove that he's a legitimate starting quarterback for them to have a chance in that game.
Your thoughts on
You've got to anticipate in that game that it's going to be a lot of Tulane ball control with a quarterback that the staff feels much more comfortable running with, zone reads. They used him as the short yardage quarterback, and your best player is your tailback. So you're going to try to control that game, and at the same time on defense, because of Lagway and the deep ball, you want to make Florida prove, even though they have good running backs, including ones with local ties, that they can run the ball down the field. that a young quarterback cannot make that drive-killing mistake, which what we saw from Mensa hurt them in games early this year as an inexperienced quarterback, winnable games. So that's the same deal here with Lagway, that opponents weren't able to take advantage of. You get extra preparation for the bowl game. Tulane has a lot of veterans on that defense. They can hang in that game, but they don't want to be in a shootout. They're not really equipped for it in the current situation, but they can shorten that game and make it tough on a young quarterback and give themselves a chance to get what would be a marquee win and sort of take some of that bad taste out of the mouth as the way the season finished.
Final question before we go to break. Defections in the transfer portal. How's Tulane looking?
Pretty good. They're going to lose some guys. They lost Matthew Fobbs-White, who's started most of the games this year, ended up being their leader in tackles for loss. I loved him last year when he didn't play because Tulane had so much talent. He really shined in their preseason camp last year. I think these coaches were a little slow on him in terms of they weren't big fans of him at the beginning of the year. He became a starter about 3 games in the year, but again, I think he was second on the team in sacks, led them in tackles for losses. He's only a second-year player. That's a loss, but not too many other significant guys to this point. That the guys that are leaving, obviously, other than Mensa, are guys you usually would expect to lose. But a lot of guys have been recommitting to the program again. So they're in, other than losing Mensa, they're in pretty good shape.
Okay.
And we have to do our due diligence here because it's a Friday afternoon next week, right? But fortunately, the home of the Green Wave, 106.1, as well as Heaven 106.7. You can listen to the game on either of those two stations because it's a 2:30 kickoff on a Friday, pregame at 1:30, extensive postgame coverage, and then feeds right into a Tulane basketball game. So it'll be Tulane Day on Cumulus on 106.1 and 106.7. There, I took care of it for us.
Thank you. And again, let me just say this as well. Again, the ticket, again, carrying both UNO and Tulane. So again, if you're looking for, again, college athletics here in the, from New Orleans, you'll find it on the ticket as well. All right, we will take a break here. We will continue with the collegiate game. We come back, we'll take LSU first. I know you're saying, wait, you've always started with the Saints on this program. What happened? Well, I mean, the Tulane is more relevant right now. Obviously, again, we're going to find out what happened with LSU in the transfer portal, where they'll be going bowling, and then we'll jump into the Saints and Pelicans as we finish up, again, our last block on the program today. Jude Young and also Guerry Smith are our guests. I'm Eric Asher. I'm your host. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll hear from our underwriters. We'll be right back.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Guerry Smith of the WLAE Report, NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, the Advocate, and also Jude Young, voice of UNO Athletics, voice of UNO Basketball, rather. Also, again, the Ticket 106.1. He's part of the Access crew, and also, again, with CrestCitySports.com. All right, we're going to go to Jude first here. LSU 8-4, 5-3. They'll be playing Dave Aranda and the Baylor Bears in the Texas Bowl on New Year's Eve. That's a 2:30 kickoff. As I mentioned, both teams are 8-4. It's in Houston, which is again a great base for LSU in terms of again their recruiting. A lot of LSU graduates there. Your thoughts on this matchup?
Well, it's interesting enough, and it should be well attended with Baylor about an hour and a half away from Houston, and obviously LSU's biggest alumni base is in Houston as well. So not too bad of a bowl spot considering a disappointment overall at 8-4, despite winning those last 2 games. We're going to go over, obviously, some of the guys already in the portal, but LSU should have a pretty representative team out there, and I guarantee you that Aranda will have his team ready to go. He's a good, solid coach, and they'll be more fired up for that game than LSU. So that's a challenge for Brian Kelly, because fans fans don't care. They want you to win that football game. So, but still, the bigger picture is the offseason is really the new season already, and what's happened with a good signing class and what they need to do in the portal is everything. The game is almost secondary. It's really an exhibition. The non-playoff bowl games are simply exhibitions, and certainly for LSU in their current situation.
Your thoughts on the matchup, and then we'll get into recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important game just because people don't really have a good feeling about where this LSU. This is 2 years in a row now, because they blew a chance to win a national championship last year when they had a historic offense for the second time in 5 years. A historic offense. All they needed was a semi-competent defense, and they couldn't do it. This year, I'm still not sure what happened to LSU this year, because I was watching the Texas A&M game, and by this time the second half started, I was thinking this team can win the SEC. I was actually thinking this team could win the SEC. And then the second half happened, and then the Alabama game happened, and then the Florida game happened, and they just completely fell off the charts. The defense obviously got a lot better this year. Garrett Nussmeier, you could win championships, I believe, with him, even though he had some down moments during that down stretch. Brian Kelly made that big statement recently about they're on the playoff train and you got to get on with. I don't think that's the way the fans feel right now about where LSU is, and if they lose to Baylor, there'll be a lot of negative feelings going into next year.
Let's talk recruiting first. Again, LSU again. I think consensus 8th in the nation in terms of their class. Your thoughts?
It's a good class because they did well in the trenches. They got skill talent, particularly at the running back spot where they needed more than just Caden Durham. I think it's so important to keep Harlan Berry, the local product, #1 recruit in the country at the position, and one of the other best running backs available nationally from Alexandria and JT Lindsey. So they should have some firepower and some playmaking at the running back spot, so they have the depth there to rotate guys in and out, because Durham was playing with injured toes throughout most of this season, and that affected what we saw very early from him. So again, Brian Kelly's learned his lesson. Now, how he's going to execute as a portal coach is going to be the key here. He thought, well, we're going to develop players. We're going to recruit 4- and 5-star guys, and we're going to develop them. We're going to do it the right way, because I came from Notre Dame and we did it the right way. Guess what? That's not going to work. It's the SEC. You don't have time to develop guys. If they don't develop, you lose games, and people want you out, and you lose recruits as a result. So he's going to be more aggressive in the portal here, but at least the foundation of a class, I think he wound up signing 23. They got top-level talent at a lot of different spots, and I think those are guys that, again, if the culture fits and you're winning games, you can develop enough of them to help you. But the portal's going to tell the tale, the difference between being an 8-win team and being a team that's going to be playing in the playoffs.
Your thoughts on LSU's class?
Yeah, it was a good class. LSU always signs good classes. That's not the issue. The issue is continuity during it. There's just been so many inconsistencies during years with LSU. If you can get that fixed, they can do great things, because there was times this year where they looked like a great team, and then there were times this year where they looked lost.
Here's a reminder. LSU had the lead going into the fourth quarter in Gainesville. If LSU wins that game, they're playing for the SEC championship. That's how it worked out. They were that close. The margins are thin in the SEC, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
I agree with you. And again, I think that LSU fans and SEC fans got to start realizing, again, the days of going undefeated or, again, going through the league is over with. Again, it is a somebody mentioned, I said each your own. They are cannibalizing each other every single week in terms of that league. Transfer portal, the players they lost, devastating to them?
Not particularly. I mean, they're losing some quality play. I was a little surprised that C.J. Daniels at wide receiver jumped in.
Me too.
But he wasn't fully healthy this year, and I think he has more in the tank. And I'm not saying 100% that he won't wind up coming back. I'm not following it that closely, but that was a bit surprising. But others were guys who weren't going to get the playing time. I think most of the guys jumping in the portal for them, including Ricky Collins as the quarterback, were probably told, I think you should find opportunities elsewhere, because Kelly wasn't messing around. He was saying words like, we have a salary cap, we've got more money to spend this year, we've got targets, and we're going to go get them and fix these problems, and it's going to come from outside. So for those who are being told to leave now, it's because they didn't take advantage of their opportunity while they were in Baton Rouge.
Any surprises to you in the transfer portal?
No, I mean, I agree with him. Clemson seems to be the only school that can, and they're in the ACC, that they can avoid using the transfer portal and be successful, and we'll see how successful they could be. You can't do that in the SEC.
That's Dabo's super church, though. That's sort of like having BYU on the East Coast.
Right, exactly. But no, he's got to, and I think he's right. He's learned. Brian Kelly wants to win, and he's learned his lesson about how to go about that.
You anticipate any change in the coaching staff?
Major changes? Well, it could happen, but I don't think we're going to know anything until January, in part because you want to get through the signing and the bowl and not have a whole bunch of upheaval. And there's still some targets, perhaps some major targets from the high school ranks that you think of for the next signing period, those who are waiting for early February. But I would question the decision to move on with Joe Sloan and the co-coordinator situation with Cortez Hankton, because not only did they not establish the running game because of weaknesses in that offensive line that maybe weren't foreseen, and they didn't run the ball well as far as traditionally when they had Jaden Daniels either, but it's also the scheme. The run scheme is so basic, and at times it seemed predictable based on formation. I think LSU needs to do some work on with that staff of analysts everybody has to go. We need to have a much more complex and much more deceptive setup as far as how we're going to run the football in order to have balance there. So Sloan, I think he's fortunate to get another shot at it, considering the offense did disappoint, and because he's a quarterback coach deep, in his core. I think that we saw Garrett Nussmeier have the type of regression midseason that's unacceptable at a school at that level.
Gary, college football playoffs, the selection committee, they went with SMU over Alabama. You agree?
I agree with it. I actually liked this college football playoff group. Like, I'm disappointed that Ward Manuel isn't going to be on the committee anymore. I actually liked their approach. I'm not into the formulas. I'm not into having a set supposed criteria, because there ain't no such thing as a set way. I think SMU was the right choice. Do I think Alabama is maybe a better team than SMU? Probably, but when you lose to Vanderbilt and when you get beaten by 21 points by Oklahoma, you lose your game. I mean, I get a little tired of the people who are making it sound like Alabama was only in the race because of their name. They actually did have more wins. Look what they did to LSU. They had more wins against top 25 teams than any team in the country except for Oregon. So they had a case, but I think the committee did the right decision, because you can't just be no-shows for multiple games against not particularly good teams. So I like what they did.
Yeah, if you lose at Oklahoma by 3 points, 2-6 in the SEC, Oklahoma, when it was all said and done, but not 24-3. You really lose your argument. And you know how SMU won by losing? They fell behind. Everything went against them early against Clemson. They were down 14-0 5 minutes into the game. They never gave up. And folks know Clemson's a talented, good team, and they had every chance to win that game at the end with their rally. That impressed people because they showed that they had the talent on both ends of the ball to adjust in game and make plays. They're good on offense. It's good to see them in the playoff. It'll be fun to watch them.
They earned their spot. You watch them play, they look like a college football playoff team.
Yeah, I would agree.
They don't look like a team that overachieved or isn't deserving.
And it's the most expensive playoff spot in history, because SMU bought their way into a major conference to be in this position. If they had the same season against the same quality of schedule in the AAC, it's not happening.
Right. And of course, the Sugar came out pretty well as well with Georgia against the winner of Notre Dame and Indiana, and that ought to be a really good game for the Sugar Bowl as well.
I hope they don't hear me saying "Go Hoosiers," because I don't think the Sugar Bowl wants that.
Sugar Bowl wants Notre Dame coming to New Orleans. You better believe that. That's for sure. All right, guys, let's talk about the Saints. 14-11 winners over the Giants. Let's talk about Rizzy first, and because again, that seems to be the big conversation piece here. What do you think it takes for him to take the interim tag off in terms of the games that are left, 4 games left on the schedule? Or is this already decided, in your opinion? They're going to go out and they're going to find a new coach for this team.
No offense to Rizzy, but it should all the way to be decided. But they played 4 games. They've won 3 of them. They lost to the best team of the bunch, an average Rams team, a young but capable Rams team. And you're not scoring enough points, I know, because of the injuries. I'll give credit to the fact that they're playing hard. The coaches are still coaching hard, although they lost one assistant, Todd Grantham. You know, guys are taking care of themselves. He's going back to college. And
he was demoted as well.
Sure, so it made sense. But again, there is everybody pulling in the right direction, despite the record in the facility and on the field, and that's what you can ask for. But again, you need a head coach with a vision. If he can win these next 2 games against Jaden Daniels and the Commanders coming off a bye, that's a playoff team, and then go to Lambeau and win, then we'll talk. If you can't do that, then there's going to be a new coach next year, and there should be.
Yeah, I mean, I on your radio show, you asked me right after you said it, and I said I didn't even think he should be considered for the job, and I mean that. I mean, I don't want to rain on his parade, but Let's go back the last 2 years. Dennis Allen, the most hated man in New Orleans as a coach, he won 4 of his last 5 games last year. 2 years ago, he won 3 straight, and they probably would have beaten Carolina if they hadn't learned during the game that they couldn't make the playoffs. Did that mean anything at all in the long run in terms of that they had turned it around? Obviously not. So Rizzi has done a very good job in his role, but they have to go outside. They have to go outside and look for it. But I also agree with you. If they can beat Washington, the Commanders, and Green Bay with no quarterback, which is then I'm just assuming that's not going to happen.
Right. Same
that
here.
would be different. That would be much more impressive than what they did 2 years ago at the end of the year and last year. That would be a different story.
Because even though they picked him over somebody like Clint Kubiak, who has a much better shot of being a full-time head coach someday, that's telling you they're moving on. You might find something even by accident. And who's to say that Darren Rizzi, I'm making the pro bono case here, and only just to be fair. Let's say he's a Dan Campbell type. This wasn't a guy who was a offense or defensive coordinator, who was a CEO, leader of a football organization. Everything's right in Detroit after so many years of being wrong, but he's that guy. He's not the offensive or defensive mastermind. Rizzi's a special teams guy. So, but maybe he has those special abilities, and you are evaluating him day to day, and you're talking to your veteran leaders, and you're seeing just in case. But again, the results have to come on the field. If they'd have beaten the Rams and they were 4-0 under him, we'd be having a different conversation and not laughing about it.
And let's be honest, that was a terrible football game on Sunday.
Please.
It was an awful game. I will say, though, what an athlete Brian Brizzi is. That was an unbelievable play. Yeah, it really was. He hasn't done a ton in his 2 years with the Saints, but that lets me know right there, even though it was a special teams play, that guy, he can be a player.
He got the NFC Player of the Week for special teams for that, and he was good on defense in that game, too, against the bad offensive line. Here's an indictment on that whole football team and the vision of Dennis Allen. He's got 7.5 sacks. He's your sack leader. He's your one good pass rusher. Your big, lumbering defensive ends. No offense to Cam Jordan. He's at the end of his career, but these are the type of body types that they wind up going after, and what does it lead to? A team that has no speed off the edge in a league where you need to have it. And oh, by the way, Trey Hendrickson had another big sack for Cincinnati in that Monday night game.
That was one of the worst decisions they ever made.
As far as Brizzi again, look, he's been, and I mentioned the radio show, when you mention someone's name in the same breath as Leroy Glover in the history of the New Orleans Saints, that's saying something, okay? And again, there's no doubt he is an exceptional pass rusher from the interior. He's got to be a better run defender. You cannot be a one-trick pony in this league, especially, again, a guy that's a #1 pick for you. Again, he's got to get better against the run, but again, there's no doubt as a pass rusher and what he's doing on special teams, again, he's shown a tremendous amount of improvement.
You're absolutely right, but remember what really freed up Leroy Glover to be a truly great every down defender? They signed a Norman Hand.
That's right.
They signed somebody to take up 2 blockers to complement a pass rusher who's not going to be good against double teams. Brizzi struggles when he's not going one-on-one. So yeah, that's going to be something the Saints need to address. We need to start building our defense around our younger, better players to complement them. And on defense, you know, you don't have a lot of them as far as playmakers in that front 7. You have good players, you have older players who you don't know how long they're going to hang on, and then you have Brizzi. So how do you make him better? Find a real nose tackle. Get me a 330-pound guy who can eat up blocks so he can be more effective on other downs, and obviously coach him up to be a better run defender.
Derek Carr injured, fractured hand in concussion protocol. I don't see him playing this week, again, even if he gets out of concussion protocol. I would think it would be probably hard for them to play him next week in Green Bay in a very cold climate, especially with the hand. With that said, let's say he comes back, let's say he doesn't. Who should be starting for this team, in your opinion?
You take that.
No, you take it. Look, I'm thinking, who's the guy you think can be a starting quarterback in the league? You're not looking to develop a career backup. No offense to Jay Kaner. I'm sorry. He's a career backup. Rattler is either going to be a guy who probably starts in this league, or he's not going to be reliable enough to be a career backup. So throw him to the Wolves now. He's gotten an exposure to be able to process that on the sidelines and grow from it and see what he can do. And once again, you're going to need some mobility because you're playing some good defense these next 2 weeks who are going to say, we're not afraid of your passing game. We're not going to let you run the ball on us. We're going to come and get that young quarterback. I'd rather have the guy who can run for his life a little bit in that situation, just for the safety of whoever's taking those snaps.
I don't really think it matters because I don't think either one of them is going to be a starting quarterback, but he's right. Spencer Rattler has the potential bigger upside. I've always been negative on Spencer Rattler, and I admit my bias. His first at Oklahoma a couple years ago. Tulane went up there in 2021, and his first pass was like a punt over the middle that the Tulane guy called fair catch for an interception. I wasn't impressed with him at all that day. He obviously played pretty well at South Carolina once he left Oklahoma. I don't buy him, but I think he had, of the two, he is the more likely to be a successful NFL quarterback, and I think you go with him. I don't really think it matters. I just don't. From what we, unless there's dramatic improvement from what we saw earlier this year, the Saints are maybe done winning this year.
Well,
except the Raiders game. That's probably
Raiders,
it.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, you got to believe that Carr wants to be back for that game. He wants to play against his old team. I am in the Haener camp. I would like to see what he can do. Again, I feel that at this point, Rattler got his shot. We pretty much know what he can do at this point. I'd like to see maybe a couple games with Haener under center.
And that's fair, and I think he gives you a better chance to win right now because he's going to get rid of the football quickly and knows where to go. Yeah.
You know, but again, at the same time, there's another part, again, that when you're looking at this, you're going, man, every win puts you in a situation where you're not going anywhere, okay? So again, you're hurting your draft stock at this point, where your draft seeding. So, you know, we'll see again how that plays out. Final question on the Saints, because it's a question that has to be asked. Do you believe there will be changes with this organization in the front office, on the field, in terms of the coaching staff at the end of this season? When I say that, I mean, again, Mickey Loomis, Kai Harley, Jeff Ireland. Will there be some changes in the front office, or again a total change in the front office?
This is just throwing blind darts at this point, because I think the decision belongs to Mickey Loomis.
Right.
He controls this future, and if he's not removing himself from the equation, how can you expect big changes in the front office? I know fans don't like it, but it is Loomis's decision. It clearly is. He might as well be a co-owner at this point. So to not know what he's thinking, maybe he's tired of it. Maybe he sees the rebuild on the horizon and says, let somebody else do it, and we'll bring in some new voices. I'll interview him. We'll see who we like. I think that's what he should do, but he may feel like, I still want to have one more good season and fix this and go out into the sunset on a better note. If he's thinking that, fans better be ready.
Yeah, I don't think there are going to be any changes. I think there probably should be, but I don't think there will be. And I will say this: there's a lot of doom and gloom about the salary cap issue. We've been hearing this for 10 years now, about how they're done for the next 5 years. They don't think that way, and I don't even think that's true in the NFL, because you can be a pretty mediocre team and still win your division, and that's a realistic possibility for any team right now. And so I think his point is exactly right. I think Mickey Loomis wants to prove that they can win again. Right. And I don't see him leaving. I just don't.
If they'd have drafted better this strategy, they'd have gotten away with it. Yeah. They didn't. They haven't drafted well since 2017.
That's right. No, that's exactly right.
Totally.
That is 100% right. Yeah. If they draft better, if they draft well, then again, those high-priced veterans, what they're dealing with right now, that's cheap labor. But they did not do it, and that's why they're in the situation.
Stop trading up. More bullets in the gun.
Ridiculous.
More darts to throw at the dartboard. Stop trading up.
Drives me bananas. Drives me bananas. All right. Speaking of being driving bananas, it's been tough to watch the Pelicans. 5-20. Again, only the Wizards have the worst record in the NBA. They're second behind them. All right, Brandon Ingram injured against Oklahoma City. High grade, low ankle sprain. I've said it on the show this week. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done with the Zion Williams experiment. I'm done with the Brandon Ingram situation. At this point, again, I know it's going to be difficult, but they've got to figure out a way to be able to move these two players and start over. They got a decent core here, again, with Murphy and Murray and Herb and Hawkins and Messi. It has not worked. You cannot win with your two stars constantly being injured.
That's what it comes down to. If you don't have your stars on the floor and play enough games with your complementary pieces to know what you have and where you rate in the NBA, then you basically can't ever plan for the future. You can't ever set up a coach to succeed. You can't ever think that you have any chance to contend. I know they won 49 games last year, and again, they didn't have perfect health. But then this year, bigger problems. It's not just your stars, it's everybody else. I feel really bad for Willie Green because I don't know if he can coach on a high enough level because it's an incomplete grade. It can't be a failing grade with what he's had to deal with. And that goes for the front office too. You can't blame them for having guys that simply don't stay healthy. You can't project that. Right. So it's just such an incomplete situation.
If anybody had on their bingo card that Jeremiah Robinson Earl would be the only player who's played in every game this year. I mean, it's insane.
It really is.
The injuries they've had. So you could use that excuse if it hadn't been an issue do.
But can you,
in every
though,
other
after
year.
all
So
these
you,
years?
No, so you can't because
No.
it's too long. And the 2 stars, that's not a fluke.
No.
The other injuries are pretty fluky,
Right.
that they've just been devastated. But we've seen this over and over and over again overall, so you can't, at this point, that can't be an excuse.
The Pelicans have become the ultimate, that inside the NBA sketch. Who he play for? I mean, I'm watching a Pelicans game. I'm like, who's that? I have no
No,
idea.
it's true.
Sorry, I don't watch the
Well, they had a
Birmingham
G League-
Squadron.
They had a G League squad out there
Right,
at one point.
Yeah.
I mean, they really did. They
There's
were
no
playing
doubt.
with a G League. Brandon Ingram and a bunch of G Leaguers. Crazy. I mean, I did the math the other day. 235 of possible 425 games. That's what Zion Williams has missed. Has missed, and again, he may not be back till January.
Right.
It might be mid-January. And the Brandon Ingram situation is, again, look, they're obviously trying to move him at the trading deadline. That has hurt them now with this injury. Who knows when he'll be back with this ankle injury? So, at some point, you have to cut bait. Now is the time.
Well, here's what's scary. It's easy to say, but not so easy to do trading both of them, because then you
Right.
have no superstar foundation. But I think you're right. You've got to get what you can get for him at the trade deadline. You can't commit to somebody who you don't know if he's going to get it. He's going to understand that you're really a $40 million a year player, not a $55 million a year player. With the salary cap the way it is in the league, that is a big, big deal. And I think you get Zion back and you pray, say it's January, that he can be healthy and play great through the end of the season, and then don't get seduced by him playing great at the end of the season. Get rid of him. Call the Knicks, call a desperate mid-market team, and get what you can get and start over. Because, again, you just need a consistent product on the floor at this point.
The shame of it is they really drafted. Yves Missi has been way better than anybody
They drafted
expected.
well.
They drafted. I mean, that was it turns out I was skeptical. I covered the draft for AP, and I was looking him up and saying, I was too. That. I know, and he's skinny and all this stuff. He has been far more productive than I think than anybody thought he was going to be. They did a good job, and they have drafted pretty well with
Murray.
those things. But
I'm sorry, Murphy and Herb.
Like you said, when your stars can't stay healthy, it doesn't matter. That the NBA is a star-driven league, and you're just not going to win.
And you can't take back bad contracts. You have to take, if you're taking back contracts back, it's got to be expiring contracts. And then the other part of this is, again, you have to load up on draft picks. If you can get into this lottery this year, you have to be able to do that. This is a very good draft, especially in the lottery.
That's why you need Zion to come back and play amazing basketball for as much as he can this season, and then say, I'm starting over with the new star. I'm so tantalizing to the right team that doesn't want to wait any longer, that gets that high pick and target a player and say, we're going to do that. That's the best case, because the fans have now gotten sick of it. And you can't just run this thing back next year and hope.
No way. Again, it's going to affect season tickets. It's going to affect again the public wanting to even watch a Pelican game. Okay, and the other part of this is that, look, when you look at the Pelicans right now, when you look at this Zion situation, at the end of the day, I know people are worried about, well, what happens if he goes to New York and he blows up, he's the player that he's going to be, or Brandon Ingram, he becomes the player that we thought. It is what it is at this point. You've tried. You've given everything you can to try to make this work. It hasn't worked in New Orleans.
Scan the league and find another superstarish type player who's had their issues either where they are or with injuries or both, and say, okay, let's just sort of trade like for like and hope one side or both gets lucky with the change of scenery. You have to consider that as well when it comes to Zion, because his body type, I just do not believe that he's going to be able to consistently stay healthy. We have too much evidence.
I'll be shocked if he can. I mean, he said the body type. He's too athletic for his body type, and he's going to continually get hurt.
The Saints could use a superstar tight end, but of course he'd probably get hurt there. So what am I thinking?
They already got one. They got Kendrick Miller. they got their version. They got their version. The big T's. There's no doubt. Again, with that said, with about 30 seconds. There is no way this team gets back into this, right? I mean, again, play-in tournament. I mean, again, at this point, I mean, they got to win like 70% of their games. For those out there saying, no, don't trade them, they can get back in it. Can they get back in it?
Those people, they probably would find coal in their stocking this holiday season and think, wow, I can use this to stay warm.
Exactly. There you go.
That's all I can say to that.
They're 5-20.
Exactly. 5-20. So again, be realistic about what's going on with that. Just again, it's time. It's time to move on, no doubt. Jude Young, Guerry Smith, thanks so much for joining us here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Great panel as always. All right, thanks for tuning in, first of all. There's a QR code on your screen, which again will take you to my website, ericasher.com, and also WLAE-TV YouTube channel. Click on it with your phone, and you'll never miss this show. Here's the easiest way to do it. Set your DVR. So many ways to catch our program from WLAE, WLAE-TV 2, Pelican Sports Television. Set your DVR. You'll never miss our program. You can catch me on the radio, 106.1 The Ticket. That is 4 to 6 weekdays. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, again, Anchor, Spotify, Apple. We're on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside New Orleans Show with Eric Asher. The Ticket has our own app now, so download the app. So again, you keep up with, again, my show, Jude's show, and all the great programming over at the Ticket, 1061.com. And also, again, don't forget, as always, please continue to support our underwriters who make this show possible. We appreciate each one of those underwriters. Thanks so much to them for, again, supporting our program. And also the great staff here at WLE who do a fantastic job producing our program each and every week. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, Thomas Healy, and of course the best director on the planet, William Hill. For Jude Young and Gary Smith, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. See you then.
We are one community
with one mission
and one heartbeat. We are resilient.